Imagine an $80 million warship reduced to a blind, burning wreck by drones costing less than $2,000 each. That's exactly what unfolded inside Russia's untouchable Teryak Bay. A fortress of radars and missile shields, shattered in minutes by silence, disguise, and precision. If you've ever wondered how tiny cracks can topple giants, this is the story. Stay with us. The myth of invincibility is about to sink. The untouchable nest. Teryak Bay was supposed to be a fortress, a steel nest where Russian ships could rest, reload, and strike again without fear. The Buyan-M docked there was shielded layer upon layer of defenses, the kind of systems meant to swat anything out of the sky. On the shoreline stood Podlet K-1 radar towers, their sweeping beams watching every corner of the horizon. Beside them, the Pantsir S-1, a close-in defense system feared for shredding drones and cruise missiles mid-flight. Together, they formed a safety dome, a net of eyes and claws. No unknown object was to survive more than a few seconds inside this perimeter, and Moscow believed Teryak Bay was untouchable, a safe cocoon for the Azov fleet. Here, ships could refuel, reload, and prepare new salvos against Ukrainian cities, power plants, depots, even schools. But Ukraine had found a crack, a narrow blind spot where radar beams skimmed too high, leaving the surface of the sea unwatched. It was a gap so small the Russians dismissed it. Yet through that gap, at that very moment, something small and silent crept closer. The hidden strike teams, 6 miles from the bay, a small speedboat drifted across the black water. To anyone watching, it looked harmless. Just another fishing vessel rocking quietly in the night. Nets, tarps, and even a few buckets sat in plain view. But beneath the camouflage lay something far more dangerous. Inside the cockpit, 2 men sat motionless, Ukrainian special forces, members of the 73rd Naval Center. They wore Russian-style caps, shabby fishing jackets, the perfect disguise. But behind them, hidden under gray tarps in the rear compartment, rested the true payload. 2 Beaver FPV drones, heavy configuration. Each carried an armor-piercing warhead, night vision optics, and an internal guidance system that didn't need GPS. Weapons that cost less than $2,000 apiece, yet packed enough force to cripple a warship. This boat wasn't fishing. It was a launch pad, and its crew wasn't here to catch squid or herring. They were here to hunt steel. The plan was simple, almost absurdly so. Release 2 drones, strike 2 targets, and vanish into the night. But if it worked, Ukraine would humiliate Russia in its own backyard. And as the boat slid silently toward Teryak Bay, the moment of truth drew near. Countdown to launch. At 3:27 a.m., the silence snapped taut. The speedboat nudged closer, crossing into the outer ring of Teryak Bay's surveillance net. The 2 men moved with practiced calm, no chatter. They removed the gray tarps. The drones emerged like sleeping beasts, sleek fiberglass bodies, matte gray, low thermal profiles built for the surface-hugging run. Fingers found safety pins, toggles flipped, armatures engaged. The cockpit lights dimmed. They launched in sequence. First thunder, catapulted from the stern, a whisper of compressed air and electric prop spin. It kissed the sea, then climbed, barely, cutting a line 3 feet above the black. 40 seconds later, Vidplata followed, offset by 30 degrees, carrying the strike vector for the heart of the ship. In a control bunker near Zaporizhzhia, an operator watched on a grainy FPV feed. His breath fogged the screen. His hand hovered over a stick that would steer destiny. Markers ticked. 1,200, 900, 650, 400. The night swallowed sound. On the deck of Buyan-M, sailors slept. Officers laughed. Systems rotated, oblivious. Every second felt like a lock clicking closed. The drones hugged the radar blind zone, gliding under beams scanning above. The plan was brutal. Blind, the watchful eye, stabbed the chest. The countdown was no longer a number. It was fate tightening its grip. The first blow, 3:31 a.m. The moment arrived. On the FPV screen, The radar mast grew larger, its rotating dish oblivious to the storm rushing toward it. The operator's fingers clenched. 400 feet, 200, 100, then impact. A burst of white light tore across the deck, flames leaping skyward like the breath of a furnace. Shrapnel shredded the air, shards of antenna spinning into the sea. For a heartbeat, the Buyan-M kept turning as if nothing had happened. Then its systems became dark. The radar's eye had been gouged out. On board, chaos erupted. The commander barked for diagnostics, convinced it was electronic warfare. But the truth was simpler, crueler. The main radar was gone, the signal transmitter fried, the antenna mast ripped clean from its shaft. The ship was blind. Now its survival hinged on the Pantsir S-1, the last-ditch shield against incoming threats. But its crew was dazed. The control center scorched, temperatures inside surging past safety limits. Flames licked the cabin. One radar officer collapsed, blood seeping through his uniform where a shard had pierced his chest. In less than 10 seconds, the Teryak Bay fortress had cracked. The Buyan-M, Russia's strike platform, stood vulnerable, thrashing in confusion, and retribution was already screaming in from the sea. The killing stroke, 6 seconds after the radar mast vanished in fire, a second shadow skimmed across the waves. Vid Plata, retribution. Its camera feed showed the deck of the Buyan-M sliding into view, the launch hatches lined up like gray coffins. One hatch gaped open, bay number 3. Inside, heat signatures glowed. A Caliber missile primed for firing. The drone veered at a 25-degree angle, closing fast. On board, alarms shrieked. A watch officer shouted about a low object port side, but the words were useless. The radar was gone, the optical cameras blinded by soot. The Pantsir had never been ordered to fire. 3:32 a.m. The strike hit. The explosion ripped Bay 3 apart. The hatch blew skyward, metal twisting like paper. Black smoke clawed into the night. Fire spilled into the secondary electrical bay, chewing through wires, roasting the launch control module. Adjacent missiles began to overheat. The ship tilted, 5 degrees to starboard, seawater flooding a damaged compartment below. On deck, the crew scrambled with extinguishers, sealing emergency valves, but it was chaos. Orders fractured. Voices drowned in static. The Buyan-M still floated, but its teeth were gone. Its eyes were gone. And in that instant, Russia's $80 million warship was reduced to a helpless hulk in its own safe zone. The fallout. Within minutes, the pride of Russia's Azov fleet was crippled. A ship once capable of striking anywhere in Ukraine now broadcast a desperate message across the UHF band. Buyan-M B-38 attacked. Radar damaged. The Caliber system is damaged. Requesting support and tow. The officers who had raised vodka glasses only an hour earlier now stumbled through smoke-choked corridors. Some fought flames. Others dragged the wounded from shattered consoles. The radar tower was gone. The launch control system was dead. Panic rippled through the crew as the vessel continued to list, its stability uncertain. But the Buyan-M did not sink. Instead, humiliated, it was forced to limp back toward Sevastopol under escort, a broken hulk trailing smoke over the water. Meanwhile, in a darkened bunker hundreds of miles away, 2 Ukrainian operators sat in silence. On their monitors, the feed had become black after the final explosion. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. They simply removed their headsets, knowing the mission was complete. A fortress had been breached. The balance of fear had shifted. The bigger picture. The Buyan-M wasn't just another warship. It was a floating missile platform, part of Russia's strategy to terrorize cities far from the front. Each caliber it carried could flatten an apartment block, pierce an energy plant, or shatter a railway hub. Now that arsenal lay crippled at the bottom of its launch bay, ruined not by fighter jets or submarines, but by 2 drones costing less than a family car. The attack revealed something terrifying for Moscow. Its so-called safe waters were illusions. If drones could strike a Buyan-M in its own port approach, what else could they reach? Every ship, every base, every depot suddenly looked exposed. For Ukraine, the symbolism was just as sharp. It showed the world that ingenuity could counter brute force, that a country denied advanced jets or naval fleets could still claw apart the myth of Russian dominance. It was no longer about sinking ships. It was about shattering narratives, showing that the Black Sea was no longer Russia's private playground. Final reflection. The night of September 14th wasn't just another battle in the shadows of the Black Sea. It was proof that a fortress can be cracked, that arrogance can be punished, that technology in the right hands can outwit brute force. The Buyan-M survived the flames, yes, but its reputation did not. Every commander in Sevastopol knew it. Every sailor whispered it. A ship that once carried fear now carried shame. And for Ukraine, that moment stretched far beyond the waves. It became a story, almost a legend, of men in silence guiding tiny machines toward a giant and winning. The question now lingers, heavier than smoke on the water. If 2 drones can dismantle a warship, what else waits in the dark skies? What other untouchable weapons may fall? The war continues, but the myth of invincibility has already sunk.